Tonight marks the 40th anniversary of an unsolved crime spree that terrified Chicago and the nation. 7 random people murdered with cyanide-laced Tylenol.
The killer or killers never caught. CBS 2 investigator Dave Savini spoke with one family still grieving 3 loved ones. Their deaths, though, likely saved others.
When I see this bottle, it takes me back to the most tragic moment of my family's life.
Monica Janus was just a child when a killer deliberately laced Tylenol capsules with cyanide and placed the tainted bottles on the shelves of stores around the Chicago area.
Do you think they'll ever solve this crime?
I hope so. Before I die, I hope I see the person.
The death of 35-year-old Paula Prince stunned her family and friends. Her body was discovered last night inside her apartment on Chicago's near north side.
People were poisoned, and as the body count started to rise,
this product may be contaminated with cyanide and should be destroyed.
So did the fear.
Paula was murdered. She was just murdered.
Cyanide-contaminated Tylenol has been responsible for 3 deaths in the Arlington Heights area. Do not take Tylenol until further notice.
It was everywhere because Tylenol is a thing that everyone uses.
There were 7 confirmed cases.
12-year-old Mary Kellerman was a student at Jane Addams Junior High in Schaumburg, and according to school officials, she had a cold, which is probably why she took the contaminated Tylenol. She died yesterday morning.
It was 40 years ago to the day, September 29th, 1982.
It was very scary and sad to think, wow, our family is just falling and dying.
3 members of Monica Janus's family were murdered. She was only 8 at the time.
Everybody's sobbing and crying.
Just a few years younger than her daughter Isabel.
On September 29, 1982,
Isabel recently wrote an essay for school on how the Tylenol murders destroyed her family.
What kind of a person does something like that?
An evil person that just doesn't care about people.
In Chicago today, city inspectors began checking stores to be certain all Tylenol was off the shelf.
Serial killer?
Yeah.
Her great-uncle Adam Janus, a physically fit 27-year-old mailman, wasn't feeling well when he woke up for work. He unknowingly bought tainted Tylenol at Jewel in Arlington Heights and collapsed later at home.
So when they told my family that he died from a heart attack, they couldn't believe it. They're like, why would he die from a heart attack?
At first, the family was told Adam's heart failed, and after they wept over his body, they left the hospital. Her other great-uncle, Stanley Janus, and newly wedded wife, Theresa, then went to Adam's house. The tainted bottle was still there. They weren't feeling well and reached for the pills.
And then Stanley and Theresa took it because they had a headache. Later on passed.
We all love each other, you know.
Joe Janus is the older brother of Adam and Stanley. They all came to Chicago from Poland for a better life.
My brothers were was everything to me.
All had good jobs. Joe and Stanley owned an auto parts store.
Everything we try so hard in this country was going okay for us, and one day everything fell apart.
Joe was with Stanley as the poison kicked in.
He just fell down. And when he fell, his mouth was white stuff was coming out from his mouth. His eyes turned backwards, I seen, you know. So they called the ambulance.
When the ambulance arrived, Theresa also collapsed.
It's awful. One of the worst calls I've ever been on in my life.
Chuck Kramer, an Arlington Heights Fire Department lieutenant at the time, was working on Stanley when Theresa grabbed him and fell.
As soon as I turned her over, a second ago she was holding on my arm, and now she's there and her eyes are fixed and dilated and non-reactive to light again.
The amount of cyanide she had in her would have killed 26 elephants.
What kind of person opens up a capsule and fills it with cyanide and puts it back in a jar and puts it on a shelf?
He's an animal that he kills people with no fear.
19-year-old Theresa Janus and 25-year-old Stanley Janus were married in this church just 3 months ago.
Images of their caskets and Adam's casket at the altar created even more panic and pain.
I remember my father approaching Adam's coffin, and he just couldn't take it. He literally threw his body on top of my uncle, and the coffin almost tipped over. I'll never forget that. It was terrible just seeing that.
What are you thinking about right now?
I don't feel like, living anymore.
40 years, guys. What a tragedy for your family. Our Father who art in heaven.
When you speak of the victims, you speak of them as family.
Yeah. That was real hard.
The Janus killings were the key to finding all 7 deaths were caused by tainted Tylenol. Chuck Kramer was part of a team that quickly made that heroic discovery, leading to its immediate removal from stores and homes, saving an unknown number of lives.
I watched family end. I don't know how anybody could do anything like that.
But the killer was never caught, and the Janus family says after all these years, detectives never contact them. No updates, nothing.
Your father deserves to know.
He does deserve to know. I just see him cry all the time.
Joe Janus moved his family away from Chicago to the Wisconsin Dells, a new life with his daughter Monica and grandchildren, including Isabel. But the family never escapes the pain. It's embedded in their DNA.
It's hard for me to live. But I still got my daughter, my son, my grandchildren. I gotta live for them.
I truly believe that justice will be done, if not in this lifetime, then in the next. In loving memory of Adam Janus, Stanley Janus, and Theresa Janus.
Monica and her father, Joe Janus, say the only time they ever spoke with police was last year. Monica got an anonymous tip. She's the one who contacted police. They've heard nothing since. Dave Savini, CBS 2 Investigators.
Oh, but it's overwhelming. The pain that 40 years later is
still so fresh.
Oh, even with the firefighter who responded. What a story. This series will continue tomorrow night at 10 o'clock right here on CBS 2. Investigator Brad Edwards tracked down the person neighbors call the Tylenol man and his connection to the case.
You can dive more into the investigation and the interviews with people who remember the case in a special section we've created on our website, cbschicago.com/PainKiller. You can also watch a preview of our multi-part docuseries PainKiller coming out later this fall.